Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week, we take a special look at the haunted house movie Burnt Offerings from director Dan Curtis. This is our summer rental special. This is our haunted VRBO episode. I'm very excited. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, editor of this summer's Castle of Horror Anthology, Volume 1, available now. With me from Austin is Tony Savaccio, tech director at Rooster Teeth, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin, Jamie Barr is the executive director of Girls Rock Austin, lead singer and upright bassist of the all-female rockabilly band Danger Cakes. Welcome back, Jamie.
Thank you. I just got back.
I know that you've been traveling around, but I mean, welcome back to the show. Oh wait, you were on the show last week because you covered for me.
Yes, I was.
You covered for me in Dallas, and I'm so thankful that you were there, and that Drew actually was emceeing there. So
yeah, we had a great time.
Yeah,
and the girl was very dramatic.
What she's referring to, you didn't actually get to hear, but a young lady who I hope if she hears this is doing okay, fell and I guess sprained her ankle severely or possibly even broke her leg. But Jamie, in full Lucy Chaplin cosplay, sprang to her aid. It was a very dramatic way.
I took off my lab coat to prop up under her foot and get an ice pack to, make sure she wasn't. Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
I administered first aid, but
wow, that's some amazing backstory. Well, I know clearly, and I love that you were dressed as Lucy Chaplin. That's fabulous.
Yeah, so, wig and all.
That's
emergencies. And an appropriate lab coat.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Okay, well, welcome back, Jimmy. That's fabulous. You're the second person in Austin, and third, also in Austin, writer of the long-running underground comic series Halloween Man and winner of the 2018 Best of Austin Award from the Austin Chronicle, Mr. Drew Edwards. Say hello.
We're ganging up on you, Austinites, tonight, Jason.
I know.
Colorado's going down.
I mean, I was in Austin for like 11 years, and I really miss it. And you and I kind of traded places because you got to Austin like within months of my leaving Austin. So that was really strange. Yes. Anyway,
are you trying to say I'm bizarro, Jason?
You are. Yeah. That's wonderful. You can develop your own grammar for that. Okay. Burnt Offerings. You know something, I've been kind of wanting to talk about this movie for several years. Here's the basic deal about Burnt Offerings. Burnt Offerings is a 1976 American horror film co-written and directed by Dan Curtis and starring Karen Black, Oliver Reed, Bette Davis, Lee H. Montgomery, with Eileen Heckert, who's this wonderful character actress, Burgess Meredith, and Anthony James, the Smilin' hearse driver. The plot follows a family who begin to interpersonally dissolve under supernatural forces in a large estate they've rented for the summer. While the film received mixed reviews from critics, it won a bunch of awards in 1977. Originally set on Long Island, the movie moves the action to California. It was the first movie to be filmed at Dunsmore House in Oakland, and this is the house that we saw in Phantasm. So, I'd like to do opening thoughts like this. We can have our guest go first. Let's go Jamie, Tony, Drew, and then I'll go. Jamie, are you ready to hit us with some opening thoughts about Burnt Offerings?
Sure. I like the movie. I have to say the cast was great. I was so amazed to have Bette Davis still kicking and giving her all and being such a cool badass lady. And she was my favorite out of all the characters, even though she was the first one off.
Yeah.
But I mean, the movie did have some questions that it left me with. One being is this actually a ghost, or is it the house itself that is preying on these people and their blood and their emotions and all the damage that it's doing. So, but I did like the movie for the most part. It does have that kind of TV show drama, or something you'd watch on The Weekend on ABC or something like that back in the day.
Mm.
But I do think like I said, I do like the movie, and I found it to be kind of quirky and funny, yet also like terribly sad because everyone's doomed.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tony, um, I don't know if we've ever discussed this movie ever, so I'm dying to hear what you thought of this.
Yeah, I like the movie. It does have a very TV movie feel in a lot of ways. Also, a lot of the 70s soft focus stuff that they do, especially in the house. And what a cast, though.
Yeah.
Like Dub Taylor doing Dub Taylor
Yes.
stuff. Just so many, all the people who have cameos who are in there briefly. And yeah, it was great. Although it does say, don't go to a haunted mansion, I guess. If you're hoping to revive your marriage, maybe Haunted Mansion not the place to revive your marriage.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of Money Pit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember the Tom Hanks movie?
Mm-hmm.
They're like, everything's kind of dilapidated, it's falling down, and not quite falling down, but it's not looking so good. The house needs a little bit of a makeover, and they're like, wow, what a steal! $900 for the whole summer. $300 for 3 months, or per month for 3 months. That's not so bad. But
oh yeah, it's really cool. There's a lot of fantastic imagery. I know the chauffeur character. I've seen people ape that in a few videos.
Really?
Yeah, I can't. I watch a lot of stuff, and you watch a lot of videos when you're growing up, and then there's also Night Flight is now back on, and I've watched tons of old videos. So I'm not sure, but I've seen there was somebody who's aped that look, and it's terrifying.
I mean, my thought would be
cool
the first
imagery.
thought I'd have would be Greg Kinn with Jeopardy. My Love's in Jeopardy. He had a lot of like twisted, smiling people that would like that.
It's cool though. It's interesting when it starts. As it progresses, and like Jamie said, the house starts to take on its own thing. There's a lot of great stuff. Oliver Reed just playing Oliver Reed doing you freaking out. It's always good.
Crazy drunk dad.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great stuff. Again, it did feel a little bit, ABC weekend movie, but there's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of great stuff in there. So yeah, I enjoyed it. I'm glad we're covering it.
I want to address the whole question of the look and the directing style once we get into the main conversation, because I think it's really important. But I'll leave it for now. Drew, opening thoughts.
Well, this is a movie I've heard quite a bit about over the years. It seems to have a bit of a cult following, but this is actually my first time having seen it. And maybe because it had been built up so much in my mind, I enjoyed it, but I simultaneously did feel a little underwhelmed by it in some ways. And I like Dan Curtis, so when I saw that he was the director, that actually made me get pretty excited. But I feel like, having now had a couple of days to think about it, my primary issues with it, and this could just be me bringing my own thoughts to it, is I don't have a lot of sympathy for anybody that is not Bette Davis in this movie. Like nobody.
Well, the son probably.
The son, the kid. Yeah, okay, the kid. Okay, I will. Out of the adult, I don't have much sympathy for the other adults.
Okay.
Because once the weird stuff starts happening, no one investigates any further. And I like because this is essentially, we can get into what the supernatural force is, but because this is essentially a haunted house movie, usually there is a point where somebody delves into the history of the house. And I kept expecting Oliver Reed or Karen Black to go, aha, this is why all this is going on, and this is what we probably should do. And no one ever did that. The only thing, props to Oliver Reed, he does try to leave.
Yeah.
So I will give him. That's something that we're always, anytime we watch one of these haunted house movies, we're constantly going, why don't they just leave? Well, Oliver Reed does try to leave. So some props to that. But when reflecting on this movie, I find myself annoyed with a lot of the choices that some of the characters made. That being said, I did enjoy the movie, and how could you not enjoy this cast? I mean, like I would watch the brother sister duo just wandering around the mansion being weird. I would watch like a whole like sitcom.
Definitely.
Of that. They were great. So like there's a lot to like here. I don't want to I guess I'm the one that was like the most lewd. I will also say I kept hearing about how scary this movie was. I did not find this movie scary at all. However, I do find aspects about it disturbing.
Like
not
Burgess
creepy,
Meredith?
not definitely the parent. And I'm sure we will get more into that. I know Jamie had all kinds of thoughts on that when we were actually watching it. But less scared, more disturbed, and I will cut my thoughts off on at that point.
So there's lots of stuff that I want to talk that's sort of contextual about the movie, but I think for the sake of the listener, it'd be better if we got into some of the topics that deal directly with the plot. And then we'll get into Dan Curtis and stuff like that. But to begin with, what happens here is you have this, we meet the Rolfs. The Rolfs are a 3-member household. It's, teacher Ben, his wife Marion, and 12-year-old son Davy. This movie, I will tell you, follows the book almost exactly with very few changes. Very, very few. There's a little less sex in the movie than in the book, and the ending is different, although not that different. But so we know from the book the guy's a school teacher. The movie doesn't bother to tell us. If it does, I missed it. What exactly he does for a living, but whatever he does for a living, they're taking the summer off and they're renting a house for the summer, and they rent a house that immediately he can see from his. I am just a perfectly regular middle class educated guy. And this house is out of my range. I mean, it is an enormous mansion. And he's like, oh, well, surely there's like a servant's quarters or something that they're renting out, like a guest house. And but no, they're going to get a house that normally would be way, way outside their price range. And so they're going to get away for that. And the thing that I wanted to bring to everybody's attention is that this book came out in 1973. It was one of the books that Stephen King said that he super enjoyed in Danse Macabre. And in 1977, Stephen King, I have to say, he was partially inspired by this book when he turned around and did The Shining, which is very, very much a similar plot. That they don't have all the money in the world, they got education, and they're getting into a situation that is way, way, way better than anything that they could afford on their own. And the problem, of course, is that when you do that, and also in 1977 is the Amityville Horror, which is also the same thing. So one of the reasons why I think they don't want to leave. First of all, Marion starts getting really strange, and we'll talk about that. But it's they're in over their heads. I mean, if they left, they've lost.
Where are they going to go?
Where are they going to go? I guess they'll go back to their apartment. But this gives us an opportunity to talk about this family. Marion doesn't like where they live.
What's up with them? Like, this is something I always feel like horror movies do. You get someone who buys a house, or in this case, at least it's a rental, so they can, break the lease. Actually, there's no real contract was signed, but
right.
Why is that? Like they rent houses, they buy houses without ever seeing them. Have you ever done that? Well, probably not. The only way I can think of how this would work, it's the modern day Airbnb.
Yeah. They do go out for the interview, right? That the one interesting thing about this movie is they go first, like about a month early, just to walk around and take a look at it.
Is it even a month? I thought it was like the next day they come back.
It's not. It's not clear.
Yeah, it seemed like anywhere from a day to a week. It wasn't very long. I mean, I was on crunch and I didn't see our house for the walkthrough. I just trusted that Rain knew the house that we needed.
Yeah.
So
I didn't. She would recognize if the house was haunted or not.
Right.
Yeah. Well, all the things. Look, I'm pretty sure she's pragmatic, and we've been together a long time. So, and she knows I need somewhere to shove all my stupid crap. So.
Also, like, what's up with the house? Not if it's everybody can come and go as they please. I mean, they have to get food and they have to get supplies throughout the summer. So the house lets them leave. But then when they're like finally at the end, like, we're gonna leave, they're like, no.
That's when the house starts to get mad. But
the house knows when you're gonna, and nobody's smart enough to go,
Really
nope,
leave it.
gotta get groceries. Wink,
somebody's got to
wink.
say to the house, "Don't worry, house. I'm just running for cigarettes. I'll be back in 15."
Exactly.
And the house goes, "Do do 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 do." I think Oliver Reed's not coming back. That bastard. But
He said
but at the-
cigarettes. Damn it.
but at the beginning, I want to talk about them and the family too. But at the beginning, they go to visit and they're like, okay, pluses and minuses. This is an enormous house and it is beautiful and clearly gorgeous. Minus, it is shabby as shit. Nobody's been taking care of it.
You know what? It's not that shabby.
Yeah.
That's something Jamie and I both remarked on.
Yeah,
it's dressed.
Taking care of it too.
It's dressed to be a little shabby. It's got weeds all over.
Let's be honest here.
All right, well said. Yeah, well said. The pool is algae. The greenhouse has no living plants in it, and so they're like, okay, that's the negative, that we're going to be expected. For some reason, they assume, this is just the way they roll, that we take on this house, we're going to be doing labor all summer. We're going to be fixing up the house. The dialogue never really quite goes so far as to make that clear, but that is certainly what's on Karen Black's mind, is we're going to rent this house and I'm going to fix it up, which is...
Yeah, I wondered if she was like a realtor or something in the beginning, like the way she was talking about the house, and she was like so interested.
Yes.
She's like, and I know we, maybe because we had just watched The Ring versus The Grudge, and Drew and I actually just watched The Grudge the other day. Like this whole thing with the idea of like houses pulling people into them, like a certain space, like being like having this energy that just can like attract a certain person or like sink their hooks into them.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
pull them in. It's just like, how did Karen even, or how did I say Karen? Her Karen Black's character even find this house to begin with?
Well, in the book, it's an ad. She sees an ad, and it says, "Reasonable price for the right people." To which
And
Ben responds, "I'm sorry."
Local.
Yeah. It's just out. It's like upstate New York. So they're just advertising in the paper in New York, and Ben reads "the right people." He takes that to be a racist statement. He's like, no, I get it. They're looking for middle class white folks, and that's us to rent the house. He calls them racist. He calls them racist bastards.
Wow.
Basically,
he's like, racist. I'm going to use my privilege.
Is he English in the book?
No, he just is English in the movie, and I've heard people say about Oliver Reed's accent that it changes from scene to scene. I did not perceive that at all. He seemed fine. He seemed like a fairly regular English dude, through the whole movie.
I mean, it's not like English people don't migrate to the United States all the time. I don't really felt like that needed a whole lot of explanation. The only thing that made me think about it is Bette Davis being his aunt.
Yes. Right, and Bette Davis is clearly American, but he's English. But his character, it's like Schwarzenegger. The guy has an Austrian accent. We're just going to roll with it. Somebody will explain. And I watched a Van Damme movie where they said that he was from Louisiana, and that was why his accent was so strange.
Oh, hard target.
Hard target, yes. So
I bet that was effective.
But the other downside, though, so yes, hold that thought about the house getting the hooks into it. While they're still checking it out, there's one more thing. Ben goes, okay, I'm waiting for the catch. And they go, oh, there's no catch. Well, there is the one thing. Our mom, we're two old people. This is Burgess Meredith at about 80. Our mom is upstairs, but she's 85, but could pass for 60. You'll never see her. Just leave a tray for her 3 times a day. So immediately they should be going, now hang on. This is like in the House of the Devil, right? Now, hang on. You advertised one thing, but actually this is so you guys can leave for the summer and you've got somebody to take care of your mom. And Ben is like, no, I'm out. That's the point where
$900? Babysitters make more than this.
Right. And
yeah,
then,
by the way, you're going to pay to take care of our mom.
Yeah,
yes.
that's really
that's the one that's like, wait. We're paying
Yeah.
That's freaking weird, man. Like,
Yeah, totally weird.
also the fact they don't call a medical professional the instant they get there and the tenants have just left. Hey, we
Yes.
left mom. I guess if you get around to it, throw her some food.
And the fact that
Well,
like
they're super.
how long does Karen Black's character, like how long does she, I guess it's kind of like not specific, but you're like, so she
Yeah, tell the
never
story from
actually
Karen's
sees
perspective.
her. Yeah,
Like,
she never sees this woman, but she's like constantly leaving food for her. I couldn't tell if the food looked like it had been eaten or not,
I couldn't either.
or if
Sometimes,
and I
yeah.
and I was like, oh, is she eating the food? Like, is she sitting down and just like listening to the music box and like munching? Like,
Well, I mean, the big implication is that once she starts, the house and the old lady, who's some kind of revenant
Yeah.
/ walk-in or whatever you call a soul that's going to pass from something. This is cyclical by the end, by the time we
Yeah.
get to it, evidently this is cyclical, and this is what they do. They bring the house, they bring her back to life, and by that token, the house comes back as well.
Yeah.
Well,
This is just something they
before we
do.
get too
But anyway, like the idea is, I think, is that she's held in thrall.
Yeah.
So once she starts opening the music box and feeding, that starts the spiral of it. The old lady / the house getting their hooks into Marion. But I mean, but even before that, it causes crazy town stuff with Oliver Reed.
Well, but just to stay on
before
Marion
we
for
get
just,
too far away from this, though, I want to
Yeah.
talk about the brother and sister a little second. 'Cause
Yes.
First of all, I would be alarmed by these people because, firstly, they have like a really weird relationship. Like they only call each other brother and sister. Like
Yeah.
the brother is in a wheelchair. It kind of seems a little incestuous.
Yeah.
Like, and then they're like also both obsessed with their mom. Like, would anybody rationally go along with this setup? Like as much as I enjoyed watching the brother and sister, like they are super creepy.
Let me tell you
Oh, yeah.
something. I get the impression that's the only reason that remember Reed all the gender roles in this movie are swapped from what we saw in other films. Like this is a swap of the way it works in The Shining, and it's a swap of the way it works in Amityville Horror. In this one, she calls the shots. Oliver Reed, no matter what idea he has, she can talk him out of it. And the reason that she goes along, I believe, is class. These guys are rich as heck, and so she's like, I don't know how the rich work. Maybe they're just, they're la di da, they're crazy. I think she wants to be a part of their world. She lusts after the silver and the wood and the greenhouse and all this stuff. You can see her just wanting to like lick the house the moment she gets into it, and she's very good at just being like, no, you're not taking me out of this place, just because rich people are crazy, I'm not leaving here the moment I get a look at it. Old lady, fine, no problem, I'll do that. And that's where she starts. And she only gets more, as Tony said, in thrall as she goes along. Like she's literally like polishing the entire house, and apparently kind of cleaning it with a sort of aura of possession too, as she goes. Yeah, Tony mentioned, but before we start to really, well, at about the same time that we know that things are getting really wrong with Karen Black, Oliver Reed's character has a very, very, very super scary scene that is directly in the book, which is he's playing with his son in the pool with their elderly aunt, played by Bette Davis, hanging out by the pool. He's playing, and he finds an old pair of glasses and just kind of looks at them for a moment because they're broken in the center, like somebody was stabbed through the eye or whatever. But it's just this thing that he finds. And then after that moment, he just gets out of control. He starts playing so hard with his son in the pool that he's going to drown him, throwing him up in the air and doing all this stuff. And it's a really unnerving
holding him
scene.
under the water.
Oh yeah.
That scene, I thought, whenever, like, I know Drew says it wasn't scary, like, it was disturbing. I think that one that scene right there is like the worst in the whole movie for me. Like
It
I
is.
found that like incredibly triggering, and just I did not like seeing that at all.
I'm glad you said it that
Absolutely.
way, because it really is. I mean, in the same way
Well, I
that the
think
stroke scene also seems like something that could really happen and makes you really unhappy to be
yeah,
watching it.
when we were watching the movie, I was thinking about how much of it is almost kind of like a take on abuse, like household abuse, even everything from like the elderly
Yeah.
to spousal abuse to um, abuse of the mentally ill to child abuse. I mean, it's all in there.
Yeah.
And it just even like sexual abuse. I mean, there's a whole scene where you're like, is he going to rape her? Is this gonna happen? You're like, what is
Yeah.
going on here? And it's just so I don't know. It's weird because it's part of me wonders because they're not in the house at that point when that happens outside, and it's near the pool where everything had happened. But
Yeah. He
no,
doesn't
that
rape
part.
her at that moment because he can listen to her. You know, he's not lost his sanity at that point. And the scene in the pool, he's directly under control of something that's not him. You know,
Right.
he's way out of control. But he's out of control the way you might be if you were drunk, or if you were just drunk on rage, or
Well,
just
it's interesting contextually because Oliver Reed was known to be a big drinker
oh
too.
God, yeah,
So like
yeah,
the way, and like Jamie, like I found just all of that business not scary, not eerie, not creepy the way we think a horror movie being, just disturbing, because it's like
yeah,
for a brief moment you're watching a movie about child abuse and
yeah.
it's deeply
Right.
uncomfortable.
It is. I mean,
Well, it
I
even
have to say,
starts with oh
go
sorry.
ahead, Tony.
It
No,
even
please.
starts with the Burgess Meredith watching as the kid falls off a thing and it's, oh look, he's hurt. Haha.
Yeah,
Like that kind of
yeah,
callousness that nobody else sees because they don't understand that that's what he saw.
yeah.
And was more than happy to see a kid in peril.
Yes. I
That's where you get the idea, oh wow, these people are super twisted just from the get-go.
yeah.
I also
But
wondered if the kid was actually the one who did that stunt, or if they had like a stunt double, because like
Huh.
he was so physically like rough on that child. Like it really, I mean,
Oh, I don't.
it
Yeah,
didn't.
I don't know the answer to that, and I was worried about that myself. I was worried about the actor. Actors are resilient. I mean, you know, so who
That's
knows?
still a kid,
Yeah,
He's like a 12-year-old boy.
yeah. I don't know the answer to that. I mean, a lot of times with movies like this, there's hopefully a psychologist, psychiatrist on set, but a lot of times they'll like prep the kid ahead of time and go, all right, this whole universe right now is play acting, and everybody is going to be cool with that. But man, I don't know. I don't know the first. I'm not an expert on that. That seems very scary to me. But I've never,
yeah.
it's
Well,
very scary because he's so powerful, and he could easily, Oliver Reed could easily hurt this kid, and you feel unsafe watching it.
Well, Oliver Reed also seems to be kind of like a method actor. I mean, like a lot of the times when he's like enraged, and he looks like he's about to have like an aneurysm. He's
Yeah,
like, his face is beet red, and where you can kind of applaud it. Sometimes you're like, all right, dude, like,
yeah.
like I know, like chill out a little bit. Like I don't know. Not that I'm not anti the acting method, but with it's specifically the kid like that.
Yeah.
uh,
Well, and
It's
think
really really
how
rough.
good you're right, exactly, that it's comment it is. This is to the movie's credit, but it is commenting on child abuse. Full stop. And so later on when he
Well, it's like
feels bad because and then there's the awkward moment with the kid, just so painful and damaged and weird. That whole thing.
mhm.
You know, this is where I think this kind of a story is at its best, really. I like haunted house stories. I love the ones where it's just a bunch of psychic people have to go in a big haunted place and unlock a mystery. Those are cool. But I have a real soft spot for these ones that are about how houses just sort of twist us to reveal what's wrong with us. I mean, those are some of my favorites.
I agree. I think that's what makes a lot of these movies very interesting. And I think I think that whole scene with his son coming in and, the mother acting like, oh, it's nothing. It's no big deal. Oh, it was just playing. Like,
Yeah.
She was making Oliver feel like he was just making too much of it. Like, you're being too sensitive. Like,
Yeah.
that's how boys play. Like, boys will be boys. Like, wow, here's some extra thick toxic masculinity that we're going to impose on you. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like
Well,
she is
there's
just
some other
guilty of
toxicity.
so many things.
Oh, I interrupted you. I'm so sorry. I apologize. What I was thinking about that was, though, think of how she's implicated in that abuse. Because the thing is, if she were to say, "You're right, that was really crazy. I think we should go home now," that she loses the house, and that's a problem that a lot of people find themselves in, where if they name something, if they name it and shame it, they could irrevocably alter their life situation. And it's a braver person than I to I've never been in that situation, but I don't know if I'd be able to overcome that myself. Very scary. So yeah, so that happens, and then they kind of get over that. But then there's the next weird. Oh, and during that whole scene, just so we know about the slow weirdness with Karen Black, is that she's upstairs and she doesn't hear any of the screaming because she is just swooning to the music box and sort of getting plugged in to the house. She starts wearing these like she does her hair up, and she starts to look more like an elegant lady. I think that in it, part of it is possession, part of it is this weird material thing with her character where she wants to be the owner of this house, and so she starts dressing like she deserves it. But those two things are so intermingled that it's really impossible to tease them apart, because she's both
Well,
possessed
even
by
the
the
way
house.
even the way the siblings talk about like how it's a good the house will bloom for the right tenant.
Yeah,
And I think this is what they're talking about, because obviously what they've been doing for quite some time is that they will find a person who will become enthralled with the house,
yeah.
and they recreate their mother through this way. But the question I have myself about this, and maybe I'm thinking too hard about
This might be a good time to talk about what the heck is going on. Like, if you were writing the Marvel Universe guide to this house, what exactly is going on with this
Well,
house? I think Tony said some of it.
my question is, you're this old woman, and you get the chance to possess Karen Black. Why would you want to turn her into an old lady? Like,
Yeah.
even an
I mean,
old lady
maybe-
who apparently was young looking. Like, why would you do that?
I don't know if
See,
you get
I
the
thought
choice.
of it as this woman. I thought of it as Burgess Meredith and I can't think of the other woman, his sister. Were both.
Eckert.
What's her name?
It's I got Eileen Heckert. Sorry,
Oh,
I
I
said
don't think
Eckert, but it's
her. But I think that they were actually like two people just like Karen Black and Oliver Reed like characters. Like, I think that they were people who were probably just looking for a nice house, or they had gone there with their parents in the first place, and maybe their parents were the ones who actually got killed by the house. Because the house is it's been around for generations and generations and generations.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean that they're the ones taking those pictures. You just know that someone is taking this picture,
Well,
like from somewhere.
so I get a totally different read on it.
Yeah.
My read is that this is cyclical for the old lady. She's like a revenant. She has taken all these pictures of, thousands of pictures over a lifetime, and that lifetime is hundreds of years.
Yeah.
And that as she has existed, she's probably had a lot of children, and this is just the last of this line, who if you have such a twisted mom, you're gonna be twisted yourself, probably.
Yeah.
And so, but the house and her in this supernatural arrangement are kind of tied together. So as long as she keeps rejuvenating, the house will rejuvenate. The kids are there. They're grown old. They're eventually going to die, but she may have more kids, or more people to stay there. And so that part is cyclical, and they're just twisted enough that they go along for the ride and they're really happy. Like, hey, we get to lead our weirdo to them normal lives, as long as mother keeps rejuvenating. And that also passes down this strange bloodline / whatever you want to call it, supernatural goings on, and it's all intermingled. But I got the impression that she's had multiple, and she's killed multiple husbands as well.
Yes.
Because if you look at all the pictures, there's some younger people, lots of guys, and different pictures of her in various incarnations as well.
I mean, I guess that also even makes sense with the name of the film, because burnt offerings kind of sounds very sacrificial.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I had never actually thought about that.
Not that it's ever made very clear, because they don't ever.
Of course.
Actually, other than the scene where the shingles falling off and like the new nice shingles are under it. They never really make it super clear what exactly. We know the house is renewing itself. We don't really know why. And they don't really, maybe, Jason, do they go more into that in the book where they explain exactly what's going on, or is it still vague?
I have no memory of that, and I think it remained vague, to be perfectly honest with you.
I can imagine a remake of this where they're having like lots of scenes of like CGI broken glass fixing itself and stuff like that, which probably would actually be worse. But like there's still part of me that the part of me would have liked to have known a little bit about what's going on, a little bit more about what's going on here.
Yeah.
Well, you nailed it, Drew.
At least so many questions. There's so much at like the rest of the movie, and like when it ends, it really ends. Because there's no one really left. I mean, I guess you could say Karen Black is left, kind of. You're like, well, does that mean she's gonna just sit in the house, like in that one room forever and ever, eating the meals of from the next tenants who ever move in there? Or is she dead too?
I think she's gonna burn out. I think that she's going to be there eating the meals and doing whatever, and I guess, I don't know, slowly plotting against humanity or whatever it is that a revenant does. And then she will just burn out from the inside and be essentially a ghost by the time the next person comes along. I don't know.
No, I mean, and they imply that this goes on for forever. As long as she keeps being fed a diet of people who can make the house bloom, it will go on forever.
It's wild.
And that's really, and I think that what we're seeing also is I don't think that once she's renewed, I don't get the impression that she has to have somebody deliver the meals. Maybe that's just her thing. I think she's still up there, because once you live that long, it's kind of like when you see some vampire movies and they just kind of hang out in the vampire mansion, because what else do you do? Because everything else is boring. Although that seems boring too, so I don't know what they're usually trying to say. But you get that impression where, this is what I do. I'm kind of tied to the house. I'm just going to catalog my photographs. And in the way that you may have an older person who hangs out and puts together puzzles, because that's what you do. Like that soothes me. She doesn't have any real need to go outside of the house or go into public anymore, because one guesses she's done that over the course of hundreds of years.
It is weird to wonder, like, what does a powerful revenant actually want to do with his or her time? And
apparently not much.
I mean, who knows? Maybe
she paints, evidently.
That's true. She paints.
There's all the paintings from that. From that window.
It'd be cool if she's like also like investing in real estate and like writing suspense novels or whatever it is.
Well, she's gonna have a great time once the internet is invented. Just online poker, revenant chat groups, old lady possession forums.
I'm glad she's not going to be a shut-in demon any longer.
Yeah, there's
All
all
those
kinds
house
of ways to
fixer
reach
upper
out.
shows, man,
Yeah,
love
you can
it.
This
DVR all of your stories that you were missing all these years.
this crazy demon is gonna love
Program.
HGTV. But uh, let's that's that a lot of that stuff is why I think this is a very, very effective novel. Is all the stuff you were just talking about revenants is also true about people who might become a shut-in, right? And I just love this sort of constant feeding on itself that the story does. It's like, hey, this is like being a very old person who becomes bitter and becomes a vampire on the people around you. This is what it is to have your situation start to sort of cause rifts in your relationships. This is what it is when you feel like your wife is moving away from you and you can't seem to figure out how to communicate with her. This is what it is when you trade off day to day which of us is going to be more of a jerk. All of that stuff is wrapped in this supernatural story. Betty Davis, who is their elderly aunt, she because the house is leeching off of all of them, right? That's why I think the moment the flowers start to bloom after they visit and the kid hurts his knee, I think the house makes bad things happen because it just gets stronger with every bad thing that happens. And Betty Davis starts out looking like a spry, she calls herself a lecherous old lady or something like that. And by the time
She's the
she
old
has
lady I think I'm going to grow into being if I
yeah.
make it that old.
Oh, she's so wonderful, right? I mean, she's fabulous. But then when she has her stroke, by that time she is a confused. She falls fast, like she goes, and we're all familiar with that. Like every horror here has a component from everyday life, and a lot of it's really, really hard to watch. Her stroke is very believable and scary, and it has nothing to do with ghosts. But what's weird is they can't
Well,
seem to get up the ability
you
to
say
call a
that
doctor.
it doesn't, but I totally think it does have to do with ghosts. It seems almost like she's being like pulled up at that one point, like almost in like an act of possession. Like when like whenever you see like movies that have like exorcisms in them and they show like the possessed person who's like being literally like raised up off of the bed and they're being pulled up like chest first, she's
Interesting.
doing that. She's like
I hadn't
moaning
thought
and
about that.
contorting weird, and I've seen people have strokes, like it does not look like that, like it suddenly not being able to speak and side of the face like droops down and things along those lines. It doesn't tend to be this fit of writhing around and like thrashing because of the pain. Like that's something entirely different.
Okay, well said. That's really interesting. Well, anyway, it's truly scary. And so once she's just sort of non-communicative, the two become the Keystone Cops as far as calling a doctor. That he goes out, the house is screwing with him, and so he only gets a busy signal. And then she goes down and says, "Oh, I called the doctor," and she's lying. and so she goes, "I called the doctor," and then he sees this vision that he keeps having, which is the hearse driver, and he is a scary hearse driver, and that's when she dies.
And that's the vision that he's having is a vision of this. It's not like just a vision. It's like a memory, like almost like PTSD, because it's something traumatic to him. It's his own mother's funeral.
Yeah.
And that the scary driver was at.
Well,
like,
it's all from the perspective of a kid, right? Because what he is disturbed by as a kid is something a smile, but it's actually something that's kind of normal, which is that while the thing is going on, he looks over at the chauffeurs who are all having a smoke and just chatting with one another because they are chauffeurs and they're not connected, so it's not cool that the chauffeur smiles at him, but it's just a human frailty. It's just a thing that happens, but it has a deeply scarring effect on him. And that's
it's also something that seems totally inappropriate too, like that the idea of like laughing or smiling at a funeral, especially when you feel that distraught to begin with.
Absolutely. Like, yeah, it's inappropriate, but it's just this memory he has. It's just a human thing. And you're right, it's turned into something that he's never quite gotten over, or that has remained something that is very scary for him, and that he used to dream about and he stopped dreaming about, but now the house is
Who
yeah, go ahead.
who plays the chauffeur?
I forget this guy's name. The chauffeur is played by a man named Anthony James, who used to be in a lot of westerns, and he played a lot of like skeevy bad guys and stuff.
Well, it's like this is not much of a role, but it's the way he looks that makes it work, because he looks almost like the Brian Bolland version of the Joker. He's just like very skinny, and he's got this
Yes.
horrible grin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, he's like, that's an iconic image. That's why I
Yeah.
said I've seen it in a few I've seen it kind of mimicked elsewhere, but in his demeanor, his gleeful antagonism of Oliver Reed, and by the way, antagonism of a child,
yes,
which is where Oliver Reed first sees him,
Yeah.
is as horrifying as anything else in the movie. To be honest, and that scene, it does seem like something straight out of Phantasm when he,
yeah,
they're on the bed and the chauffeur rolls a coffin
yes.
into the room and pushes it towards him, and that's when we cut to the fact that she's died. But oh man, just
Yeah.
terrifying.
If you look for him, like Google search his image, you'll see images of him from lots of different movies that you've seen along the way. I saw a movie just recently where he played this disturbed person who kind of accidentally killed somebody, and he played he played a bad guy in the A-Team. He played a lot of like crooked dudes in westerns. He seems in his regular photos like just a plenty sweet, regular, skinny dude. But
Sure.
but boy, is he able to turn on that weird negative megawatt smile. Yeah, so that's that very scary Phantasm. It's funny you mentioned Phantasm because, like we said, that movie used this as a set as well. Dan Curtis, who we should probably talk about next, Dan Curtis filmed, he says, and as we have no reason to disbelieve him, entirely inside this house. So there's no sets. It's all just shot on location in these practical rooms of this house. But I want to talk a little bit about the directing because this is a theatrical release, like Trilogy of Terror, that other big Karen Black thing that people think of. That was by Dan Curtis, directed by Dan Curtis. It was a TV movie. She did all kinds of roles in there. She was sexy. She was scary. She played numerous roles in that one movie. But here she is again. And Dan Curtis is using, this actress that he's used before, but he has this big Hollywood, big multi-star cast. But he does, I think you're right, he films it like it's a TV production. It's a lot of close-ups, not a lot of establishing shots. Like a lot of times you're not really, it takes time to figure out, like, you don't get the big sweeping use of this house that you might have from, I don't know, a different director of the period, like Coppola. Like I'm trying to imagine what Coppola would have done with this house to like show how big it is and and what it's like.
Well, we don't really see that many of the rooms for something that's supposed to be this big sprawling mansion.
It feels
And
kind of cramped, doesn't it? Considering it's enormous. He doesn't even give us a good look at this house, but this house is huge. It's a big house, and it feels kind of small, when he's filming it. I don't know if this is a real complaint. I just know that if
Well, there's
he's supposed to be
also.
yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. I was say if he's supposed to be communicating it's a giant house, that doesn't come across, and that might be the case with other stuff.
well,
But go
think
ahead.
about the haunting.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
the Hill House feels really big.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah, and that's Robert Wise, right? Who is a really big theatrical widescreen director. Yeah, you think about like especially the stuff in the foyer. There's no foyer ever used really in this house. Well, I guess there is, but it still feels quite cramped. It feels like, and Jamie pointed out, this is Dan Curtis, who made his bones first doing Dark Shadows, where everything took place with the camera trained on a very small foyer with a little table in front of a staircase, and people just moved around the table and up and down the staircase. And then you had some rooms, right? But the only thing letting you know it was an enormous house was the establishing shot at the beginning. We don't even get that. There's no Collinwood establishing shot here. By the way, Jamie, you were pointing out that Dan Curtis was the Dark Shadows guy. I had we were talking about this beforehand. Until I started watching this movie on Prime, I had completely forgotten that it was Dan Curtis, and that came as a real surprise to me because we're doing another Dan Curtis movie in like 3 weeks. We're going to talk about his Dracula, which I think suffers from a lot of the same stuff that we're complaining about here.
Well, I thought he does have a lot of like the similar Dark Shadows like shots.
Yeah.
Like that was something I noticed, and then I don't know. I was just kind of like, I say I was surprised, but then I was like totally not.
Right.
And I thought like, as soon as when Drew said that we were doing this movie, I was like, oh, I bet you Jason picked this out, huh?
Yeah.
Because it seems like right up your alley, Jason.
Yeah, and it turns out it is, even if I don't know it at the time. In other words, like I picked it because I'm like, oh, that is the kind of thing that I would like, and it turns out, oh yeah, it's also directed by a director that I like. Yes.
I think,
yeah,
his strengths for whatever reason is a director. He doesn't create a whole lot of atmosphere. His movies aren't that stylish, but he does a really good job. He's a good actor's director. Like I think about like the stuff that the character stuff that all the actors do here, particularly Bette Davis, who like he's somehow, she's older here, but her to go without any actor's vanity. Like by the end of this movie, like she looks terrible.
Yeah.
Like she starts off like a stylish older woman, and she just looks terrible. And someone had to get her to agree to do that, and she's an old time movie actress. I'm sure that was a conversation that had to happen. He got that out of her. So he is good. He is really good with actors, and you look at Kolchak, the Night Stalker, that stuff. Like Darren McGavin creates such a memorable character in that. And again, I'm not taking credit away from the actors themselves, admittedly, but you think of some directors are actor directors, and I think Dan Curtis is one of those.
Well, and when he shined, he shined. I mean, he won Emmys out the wazoo for Winds of War and War and Remembrance. I mean, that stuff, all that World War II stuff that he did, which the culture I don't think remembers as well as they remember his Gothic stuff. But he did an incredible, ridiculous amount of work on the Winds of War and War and Remembrance, and just walked away with all the Emmys, that those couple of years. So, to his credit. But I mean, I do think like there's some bits here just look great. That thing with the coffin coming through the door, I don't think you would have ever seen that in like a Dark Shadows. The pool stuff, the running in the rain, like bits of it really feel very cinematic. And bits of it, like Tony said, where you're in the soft focus and looking at the silver, you feel like you're watching a TV movie.
Yeah, it's angles a lot of times are things you would see in a soap opera. I mean, the soft focus stuff, I don't think you're hard pressed to find. Maybe some Merchant Ivory stuff, but looks a lot like, as far as theatrical release, Somewhere in Time might have more soft focus than this. But it's strange because it's not all the time.
Yeah,
there's these certain angles that he chooses. Oh, I'm going to do this kind of soft focus thing. And then again, I think not too long after the 70s, we left a lot of that behind.
Well, there's a haziness in the air,
right?
Also all the time. I know this has something to do with cigarette smoke being everywhere as well, right? But there's just a haze like all the time in these things.
The soft focus though is deliberate, and in retrospect, like I said, Somewhere in Time probably has more, but it's strange in this because it also evokes a lot of kind of nighttime soap opera feel to it.
Yeah, Falcon Crest and all that stuff.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And so, which that's his choice. I mean, I don't think it takes anything away from the movie. It might turn some people off who are just getting into it, who were like, why these choices? I don't even know what this is. But I think it's interesting, given his TV background, that this feature film is kind of shot in that way. But there's still great action, that has nothing to do with that, especially when they start to try to break away from the house. All that stuff is harrowing.
We should talk about the end. In fact, although to the point you were just talking about, that I'm sorry. What did you say, Drew?
Drew has become a CD.
Is that me?
I don't know.
Now you sound okay. Jamie, how are you doing?
I'm okay.
Okay.
Whoa.
All right. Let me just
I
make
think
a
we
note.
had a Jawa on the line.
Yeah.
It sounded like
Or I
somebody
guess-
decided to be a CB.
Yeah.
Breaker 19, there's ghosts. I don't know.
Wow. This is a closed room.
Talk back at me, Revenant 79.
But I'm actually a real sucker for this look, because Drew's talked about this before. I'm a sucker for classy horror, like anything where, which is what I call any of these things from like 1975 to about 1985 that involves usually horror in a big house. If anybody wears a riding habit at any given point, I'm there. If there's like people polishing silver, I'm all for these.
So what you're saying is you would have been Karen Black. You would have become possessed and got that polish on the silver.
It sounds like a Spinal Tap. Like, do you mean?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Well, do you
Jason,
mean
you've
classy or?
You always talk about wanting to have been like an old man since you were like a child, right?
Yeah, did Julia tell you that? I think that's possible.
You told me that.
Well,
your love of turtlenecks and old 70s movies.
That's true.
To tell people that without you telling them that you wished you were an old man at the age of like 12, but
yeah, I know.
it's okay. Everyone has their own thing. It's okay.
Everybody has their own thing. Yeah. Well, what I've since developed is kind of it's like I have a card catalog box of different time fetishes. So, and I just sort of filter through them. So it's like, this week we're going to be all into classy horror of the 70s, and this week we're going to be into 1950s melodrama. I can there's a bunch of them that I really enjoy looking at for their texture and so forth, and then some that just doesn't interest me at all. And
so you're like the Doctor Who of like the fetish world. Is that I'm a little confused.
Yeah, I don't know. I
traveling through space and time to
just to get off on different time periods. Well, hey Tony, you were going to say something. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I was just saying it's like a Spinal Tap joke where it sounds like, is it classy or classist? It's so hard to tell. Do I want classy movies or classist movies? It's hard to tell what I want. Because you say one thing, but I'm not sure. I don't know.
I don't know the answer
Polishing
to
the
that.
silver and writing satire. I'm into classy movies.
I think you're right that I'm a lot like Karen Black. I'm definitely lusting after a life that is definitely beyond my means, right? So yeah.
How would you feel about having a Gibson girl hairstyle?
When she's got the updo?
Gibson girl.
When she's got the
the Gibson girl.
That's when you know that you've really completely lost her, is when she starts doing her hair up like that. And absolutely.
After she wears the goth choker, which I was like, that's a cool choker.
No, all the stuff and she's clearly like raiding the wardrobe.
It kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where you can't. Oliver Reed does a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of awkward things with their marriage, which kind of gets mirrored again, like you were saying in The Shining.
Have they not had sex in 13 years? Is that what they're saying, or is it that?
No. He's saying you don't find me interesting after 13 years.
I thought they've been so too, but man, also when all that's happening, oh man, where she's finally like, well, we can't do this in front of the old lady who's in the
yeah.
And
which
how
is
do they know? That
understandable.
old lady might be a freak.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but all of that,
He's into watching.
he's very concerned about all that. But she starts wearing all this stuff and this choker,
Yeah.
and at no point is that the thing. Like he senses a change, but there's like really super obvious stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And he doesn't draw the line there. It's like some other arbitrary line.
Well, I mean,
Which
the thing
is
with the gas
strange.
heater and all the windows being locked, he has to break the windows open to get air
Save
through.
his son.
Yeah, and and I believe that that's the point where she says she kind of snaps out of it. Well,
Right.
wait. At what point does she say? Because we should get to the end anyway. But the end really comes when she has a moment of clarity and says, "No, we need to get out of here." And I guess it's the moment after that when the house tries to drown the kid, and
Right, exactly.
she is not up in the sitting room, so she has. One presumes that she has a little more of her control, so she tries to get to him. The house doesn't let her, and the kid nearly drowns, but she manages to get out and save the kid because Oliver Reed has gone sort of catatonic
Well, he's been
after.
drugged.
Oh, he's
So
drugged.
he's had, because it's, he tries to leave
Yeah.
and the house throws a tree in front of them and then
Yes.
tries to grab him with vines and everything. Like it
Yeah.
physically is attacking him at this point.
Yep.
And he's grabbed the kid and they've left the wife because he's like, I'll come back later if I do it all.
Yeah.
She's too far gone. So wrecks the car and hurts himself. And at that point, the doctor comes by, which evidently they're able to get a doctor, and evidently the house has cleared the trees.
Yes. Isn't that wild?
Which is crazy. That's The Shining topiary kind of style
Yes.
things going on. And so he's been drugged. So even though he's trying, and that's actually a really pretty fantastic scene because he's doing everything he can. And one gets the impression also it's not just the drugs, but the house is also having an effect on him.
Yeah,
And so
it is very good. And think about like what's going on here. There's no special effects. It's just Oliver Reed acting and Karen Black jumping in a pool and a kid thrashing around in a pool. And that's all Dan Curtis needs to give us a really scary scene here. And some kind of agitators to make the water, agitate. That is the moment when she goes, you know what? You're right. This is crazy. Let us leave this VRBO behind. They go and they go get in the car. And then she goes, you know what? I need to tell the old lady I'm leaving. Let's take a vote here on whether that was a wise choice on her part. She's actually
still slightly held in thrall, or she's
it must be. It has to be. Yeah.
Well, she's also, she goes full on, but she's also just concerned. So the house or the old lady has left like a seed of, well, maybe I should go check on her.
Yeah.
And in reality, most people, if they knew there was an old lady who needed your help, her family, which is weird because her family doesn't seem to care.
Yeah.
Hey, we left.
Well, you could always leave and call like Health and Human Services or something.
Right.
In theory, you call an ambulance for the old lady.
Sure. That's what you might do, but I think in general you might say, hey, okay, we're leaving, I'm going to tell you.
So they're all in the station wagon, and she's like, I'm going to tell the old lady to go back in and be right back. They wait patiently, and then they're like, oh, darn it. Okay, I'm going to go check on your mom. You wait here. And so he goes up, and there's your big reveal, is that she has been turned into the Revenant. She looks like Karen Black, but she's got white hair. And she goes, we've been waiting for you, Ben. But apparently we've been waiting to kill you, because she just pushes out a window. And
so push, throws. Like,
yes.
She has some strength now that she's reborn.
Yeah. And so he goes flying and he smashes his face into the windshield, where the kid sees his, awful, because blood just pours out of his mouth. And so the kid goes, ah! And he leaves. And then he gets crushed by a falling chimney. And that's
that was brutal.
So horrifying because he's covered in his dad's blood.
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
Where he runs out of the car.
Yeah, and this is like over the top. This is way out of control compared with anything else we've seen in this movie so far.
I also want to know, why, like, does he jump out of the window? Does she throw him?
No, she throws
kind
him.
of lunges.
Tony's got
the
it.
hell out of that guy.
Yeah, that guy's not in any position. I mean, when he comes out the window, you really do. Really does give the impression that she just like started running him and just threw him through the window, and
That's like,
so
he's flying like bouncer style.
yeah.
You started a fight you
Bouncer
can't
style.
finish in the club, and now you're getting thrown through the saloon window or the club window. That is,
And she's like, don't let the car hit you on the way out.
because he doesn't fly backwards like he's pushed. He flies straight forward,
Right.
through the windshield of a
Basically,
car.
through one window and then the windshield of the car.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
powerful. It is powerful.
And they show, like, I was kind of surprised because most of the movie's not actually that gory.
No.
Like, it's, and then that scene is just so, like, wow! Like, oh!
Yeah.
Like, it's like,
It
eyeballs
really
all,
is.
like,
I mean,
messed up. And,
it's harsh. We don't see, and then we fade with the kid getting, the bricks falling.
yeah.
Do you guys want to know how the book ends? Because it's different from this.
Absolutely.
I would love to know how the book ends.
So the book, she's upstairs, she's banging on the windows, they're at the pool. The kid drowns and he falls forward and smacks his head and dies. And so then she just sticks around.
The kid drowns.
The
and
kid
the
drowns.
husband, yeah.
And the husband hits his head and dies trying to get to the kid.
Trying to save him.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that does make a little bit more sense to everything that goes on around the pool.
But it's such a bummer that and it doesn't even have
and the way this ends isn't. I didn't realize we were watching the feel good version.
This one has so much kinetic energy that you don't feel as depressed as the version that's in the book. But really, I can't explain it in the slightest. I don't. This is by no means a better ending, but it gives you that more action, like of the trying to escape and then failing. So instead, once she sees the family is dead, she just goes, "Oh well, I guess I'm going up to the sitting room and become part of the house now." And that's what happens.
Well, and we have a narration from the brother and sister that everything has gone according to plan. Basically.
Yes. Yeah, precisely. And that I don't remember. I'm pretty sure that was actually a part of the end, but I can't remember if they had that final coda there or not. But
when they go through all the different photos, and we now see that they're of this family. The Bette Davis and everybody else who died.
Yeah. Yep. So that's the end of Burnt Offerings. It blows my mind that this is before watching this. That some of these cliches are not even cliches yet. Right? There is no Amityville Horror when this movie comes out. And there's no Shining. There's The Changeling and other stuff like Hell House and stuff. But this is it kind of stands by itself at that point. Let's get final thoughts on this. We were going Jamie, Tony, Drew, and then I'll go. I kind of just gave mine, and I apologize. Jamie, this has been a lot of fun to discuss. What are your final thoughts about Burnt Offerings?
Well, like I said, I did like the movie. It again, so many questions, so many strange choices. I don't know, especially now knowing the end of the book, how it's different than the movie. It's like, oh, it wasn't dramatic enough to have the kid drown and the dad die from a head wound. Like, let's just, throw the dad out of a window and have him, traumatize the child, only for that poor kid to be buried under a pile of rubble, just crushed. There are a lot of just different choices. I'm surprised they didn't go with.
It's pretty darn dark, man. It is.
It really is. And I do actually, goth girl that I am, I do actually like the darkness. I like the fact that it kind of goes to uncomfortable places with the narrative like that. I think a lot of other movies wouldn't have necessarily gone. Like I said, all of that talk about, or I say talk, but the visuals and kind of what it forces the viewer to kind of not only imagine but think about, history and what they've seen and heard when it comes to, abuse and trauma and neglect and, all of these different types of horrible things that people do to each other, and it's not necessarily all done on purpose. And that's something it's a very interesting take on how self-centered someone could be, and even like the fact that the house is that way. It's just, it's very striking to me, and kind of like I'll definitely remember this movie, especially because I didn't know I had already seen this movie as a child, and I remembered it. And while watching it, it wasn't until like we were more than halfway through, I think it was like the end where the father gets thrown out the window. That was when I was like, oh, I have seen this.
Yeah.
But like it definitely will stick with me this time, I have to say.
Wow, thank you. Tony, final thoughts.
Yeah, I really like the movie. I think the ending, it's interesting, the difference in the ending. Whereas in this, the voiceover lends it almost it's like scary stories you read, like either young adult or like scholastic scary story compilation books, in a way, is the way it made me feel. Something you would get at a book fair. And that's not a knock. It's just that's kind of the way it's comforting, but also strange. It's definitely not the standard now. Hyper violence at the end. It just, when it decides to go off the rails, it goes off the rails in a way. Again, you mentioned it, the Changeling.
Yeah.
It feels a lot like that in some ways, even pacing wise.
That's a good point.
It's got some really great performances. Again, I can watch even the cameo performances and random things like there's also a part of me that grew up growing up in the 80s, born in the 70s, where I see people like Dub Taylor, and it's this comforting, hey, look, there's my childhood actors, character actors. In this. So yeah, I like the film a lot. It was unexpected. I can definitely recommend it wholeheartedly, is if you want to watch something, classic 70s, but also really cool and kind of niche in a way. Definitely a classic.
Thank you. Mr. Drew, what are your thoughts?
I enjoyed this conversation a lot. I don't know if my feelings about the movie itself have changed much. I enjoyed it. I definitely didn't enjoy it as much as the three of y'all. I get, maybe it was just built up too much, because I had heard for years like, oh my gosh, that is one of the scariest haunted house movies ever made. Oh, it's so scary. I didn't really feel that way, but I did enjoy it, watched it. I would recommend people do watch it if they haven't seen it. I wish I liked it as much as maybe everyone else did.
I mean, yeah, definitely if it got built up that way, that's got to be disappointing, because it's not that. It is exactly what it is, but it's not, I mean, it's not, definitely not even as scary as the Changeling or...
No, not by any stretch. I think it's actually a lot more disturbing than it is scary. It's more moody than it's scary, I guess, is the best way to put it. It's this is a movie that I would put up, but then again, a lot of stuff I watch is not particularly scary. But no, that's a really, really excellent point, Drew. The other thing that I would mention to Drew's point, it really would have benefited from at least one scene somewhere about 2/3 of the way through, where they all go to the local library and they look at a bunch of microfiche and figure out what's going on with the house. Just one scene like that would have been good. And they didn't, because the book, other than the crazy ending, the book is, the movie is extremely slavish to the book. So they just don't do that. So there we go. Gosh. All right, let's get our endorsements. So I don't know what you guys have been up to, but Jamie, we'll start with you. Jamie, Tony, Drew, and I'll go. So Jamie, I don't know. Do you have anything to endorse for us this week?
Well, I haven't gotten to watch a lot lately, just between work and traveling. Drew and I went to Anime Fest last week, and that was awesome. But we So we haven't really been home too much, but one of the things I have done this summer was it's my usual ritual after every girls rock camp season is I watch the newest season of Orange is the New Black, and this is its final season. And man, it's such a good show, but that is a horror story in its own right. For
Yeah.
so many of the characters. So, but it still has so much heart and so comedic, and I don't know, so many of the characters you were like, you felt, you're like, all right, this is what I wanted to see happen, and then you're just so bummed out. And so yeah, if you need like a good cry and a good laugh and several of each, check out the new season of Orange is the New Black. It's the last one. So,
Tony, anything to endorse this week?
There's a Dolomite movie on Amazon Prime now. I've watched that, and that's always its own kind of insanity. There's also Eddie Murphy's is playing Rudy Ray Moore in a new movie, which I hope is at Fantastic Fest. And Fantastic Fest is coming up. Like that, I'm super excited about. So hopefully I'll be covering Fantastic Fest stuff for the podcast and letting people know when there's some cool new movies coming out. In retrospect, I'm going to probably endorse, because I've been telling more people about it. A bunch of people this week have been asking me, oh, what horror movie should I watch? I'm still going to go with Terrified, which I still think we need to cover. From Fantastic Fest last year. That is still one of the most frightening movies I have seen, and has stuck with me all year. So if you haven't seen Terrified, if you're looking for that summer, what should I watch? Yeah. Also, I did see It Part 2.
Did you really?
Because of thanks to Warner Brothers, I can't talk much about it, but I think it's worth your time. It looks great. When I can talk about it, we should talk about it.
Yeah.
But we're doing an episode.
Yeah,
we're doing an episode on it in a few weeks. So
yeah, so I saw it kind of early. I'll talk about it when we can, but it is worth your time. The casting is really fantastic. That's about all I think I can say.
That's fabulous.
The early nature of me too. But yeah, that's. Oh, and if you also, I saw Boris, a band from Japan that I really, really like, which you should check out their catalog, because it's everywhere from electronic to droney stuff to super heavy. They really run the gamut. But before them, I saw this band called Uniform, which is like, if you like hardcore bands and industrial and just aggressive, noisy awesomeness, you check out Uniform. I didn't know if I was going to be able to make it to see the opening band, and I'm really glad I did, because they destroyed. That was a really cool, and they did a cool cover of Order of Death, the Public Image Limited song that's also in Hardware. That this is what you want, this is what you get.
Yeah.
Oh man, they did a great cover of that, and yeah. So check out Uniform, check out Boris, check out It when it comes out.
Mr. Drew, what about you?
So if you do want to get yourself into that Halloween mindset, because Lord knows all of retail is already unleashing all the pumpkin stuff, even though it's still 108 degrees outside. Jamie and I did get to see Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark before we went to Dallas for Anime Fest, and it is a lot of fun with really, really cool creature effects for the monster fans. So I do recommend that. It's not perfect, but it is a lot of fun. Also, and this is a smidge self-serving, but I'm going to say you don't have to nominate me for this. But the Austin Chronicle is now taking nominations through the end of the month for their Best of Austin awards. And as everybody who listens to this podcast knows, I was fortunate enough to not only get nominated, but win a Best of Austin award last year, which has really helped my career out in a lot of ways. And, but aside from that, because it would be great if I'm not going to lie, I'd be really happy if the people who listen to this podcast would go to the Austin Chronicle website and nominate me in the comic book creator category. But you don't have to do that. If there's somebody else in town that you like better, go ahead and do that. This is your chance to put a spotlight on Texas talent and Austin talent and Austin businesses, and in a way that does actually, it's a feather in your cap. It does help you out. It's people and I used to be one of those people always sometimes are kind of dismissive of awards, but it does give you a degree of credibility that can help out your career a lot. So, think of people who listen to the podcast who do live in Austin. Think about who your favorites are in the area and maybe go nominate them. And then when the voting starts, go vote for them. So that's my soapbox that I will now get off of.
I think it's fabulous. Okay, my endorsement. I've been trying really hard to finish this book. But when I'm not working on it, I just watch random stuff, and I'm not going to waste you guys' time with my rediscovery of the amazing thing that is My Three Sons. So I'm going to share with you. It's true. Yes, true. The fact that you could pull that that theme, just pluck it right out of the air. That's really remarkable.
I watched a lot of My Three Sons when I was a kid on Nick at Night. So
I've been watching these late 1960s episodes, and I'm in love with Katie, the girl that marries Robbie. She's just a ball of sunshine. So, but my endorsement is not My Three Sons. My endorsement is not random 19 episodes from 1968 of My Three Sons. No, my endorsement is the 1949 movie Beyond the Forest, which is a crazy noir starring Bette Davis. So it goes well with the movie that we just watched. This is the last film that Bette Davis did when she was on the studio contract she was on at the time. She was 40 years old, and she plays this vivacious woman who is sick and tired of the small town she lives in with its stupid small town ways and her stupid, hardworking small town doctor husband, played by Joseph Cotton, is just this ever-suffering, giving, generous doctor who just can't believe that he's married this horrible person. And she is delightful. She's just horrible. This is the movie where she walks into the house that he's bought for her, and she goes, "What a dump!" And it's like, drag queens would have no Bette Davis impression if not for the movie Beyond the Forest. So, run, don't walk to see Beyond the Forest and see just how bad a Bette Davis character could get. She's very good, but she's very good at playing bad, and it's wonderful. So
I can't believe not a single one of us has had like a Bette Davis eyes mention. Like, I was looking for it the whole time. Every time we said Bette Davis, and it was like, especially when we were talking about how terrible she looked during her stroke scene. It's like, oh, was one eye like partially closing? Because she's got Bette Davis eyes,
and she really does.
Yeah.
But here she's, it's an older, different Bette Davis. But man, in Beyond the Forest, it's the one that people think of when they think of Bette Davis, and she's just fantastic in that. So that's a good one to check out after you've checked out Burnt Offerings, and it's free on Prime or included with Prime, or however you say that. So that's my recommendation of the week. Oh, and I got one more thing. There's a podcast on Apocalypse. It's the 40th anniversary of Apocalypse Now, and I am on the Cineversary podcast this week discussing the importance of Apocalypse Now. So check that out. And that brings us to the end of our discussion of Burnt Offerings. Jamie, I'm so thankful that you would join us for the week. It is so cool to hear your thoughts, and I think this was a really great one to discuss. And everybody, of course, everyone, thanks. And for the listener, come to the Facebook page, engage us on this. Let us know if this is as good or as bad as we thought it was, and we're doing a lot of one-offs this summer, so tell your friends, and we really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Have a lovely evening, and I will talk to you all soon. Bye.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.